Present simple tense after the time words. Time words are used to speak about time, when an action has happened, when an action was going on, etc. Whenever you use a time word in a sentence or adverbs of time in a sentence, they become time clause or adverb clause. So any sentence that uses a time word in it is considered to be a time clause or an adverb clause. Generally, there are some words that we regularly use. For example, before, after, when, as soon as, until, and while. These are some of the words and phrases that express time, and after these words, we should use present simple tense. Any sentence that has the following time words are considered time clause or adverb clause. These words are before, after, when, as soon as, until, while. So, what's a clause? Clause is just like any other sentence, is a sentence. It has a subject, a verb, and sometimes it has an object as well. Just like any other sentences, it gives you a complete meaning. There are two types of clauses, independent and dependent. Independent clause is a clause that is independent enough to completely convey a full meaning. But a dependent clause is dependent on some other sentence to complete its meaning. Before means earlier than now. After means following this moment. When means at that time. As soon as means immediately. Until means before that time, and when means during or at that time. These words are also known as conjunctions. Conjunctions are, in other words, you may call them connectives because they have a special role in a sentence. We don't always write compound sentences. We also make complex sentences. So conjunctions have the role of connecting two or more sentences to make a complex sentence. In a complex sentence, we have two clauses. One is independent and the other one is dependent. So if you look at the example here, I promise to call you is a complete sentence. It has a subject, verb, and object, and it's giving you a complete meaning. Saying I promise to call you means I will call you. On the other hand, if you look at the sentence I arrive is also complete in meaning because I arrive, subject and verb is enough to make a sentence. But if we want to join these two sentences together and make one dependent on another, we need the time words. And you can see the example now changed into I promise to call you as soon as I arrive. So you can see as soon as is a time phrase which is being used to join these two sentences. And now you have an independent clause which is complete in meaning, but the second part of the sentence which has the as soon as, and after that you have subject and verb, becomes a dependent clause. The conjunctions of time. You can also call it time clauses. Introduce dependent clauses. For example, I promise to call you as soon as I arrive. Here you can see I promise to call you is independent clause because it gives you meaning completely by itself. But as soon as I arrive is a dependent clause because the time phrase as soon as is making it dependent. It cannot give you a meaning completely on its own. Just to understand this more, if I say as soon as I arrive, can you tell me what's happening after this? If you see and think, you will understand that there is nothing written after this. So we actually can't complete the meaning of this sentence unless we read the independent clause. As soon as I arrive, I promise to call you. That's what is the action after this. So we can write independent clause and dependent clause interchangeably. We can write independent first, or we can also write dependent clause first. For example, before you go, pass me the salt. So here you will notice that before you go is the dependent clause, pass me the salt is the independent clause. And when you write the dependent clause, what's important to do is you mark the end with a comma, and then you write the independent clause. Conjunctions of time aren't followed by future tense. Though they refer to a future time, they are always followed by present simple tense. For example, I promise to call you as soon as I arrive. Even though these are two clauses, one is dependent and the other one is independent, we can write them interchangeably. Means we can start a sentence with the independent sentence first and followed by the dependent sentence. Or we can write the dependent sentence first and followed by the independent. But when you write the dependent sentence first, you should mark the sentence end with a comma. But when you write the independent sentence first and then the dependent sentence, you don't need the comma there. So, how do we write? Time words should be written first, followed by the subject and a verb. But if you have an object, you can proceed with the object and put a full stop at the end. For example, I promise to call you as soon as I arrive. Here you can see I promise to call you is independent and as soon as I arrive is the dependent sentence. So you have written the independent first and dependent after it. In this case you don't need to use a comma to separate. But as soon as I arrive, I promise to call you. If you say this, then you notice as soon as I arrive is the dependent clause. So you have to mark it with a comma to separate from the independent clause.